The fourth set will be played on Korhal, Floating Island. Spawning in the top right-hand position, in the orange, playing for SK Telecom T1, his name is Fantasy.
His opponent from Samsung Khan, his name is Reality, spawning as Blue Terran on the left bottom position of the map.
So, TvT nowadays has kind of fallen into a pattern of harass your opponent as much as possible, and then whoever has more of an advantage, you know, carries that advantage into the late game.
We've seen some other builds here and there where the Terran player gets a lot of siege tanks instead of going for the harassment. Yeah. And a lot of siege tanks, they kill the Hellbats in the end, and the Terran player finds a nice timing to move out on the map and just overrun his opponent right away because his opponent does not have as many tanks.
Yeah, we saw that from Flash versus Fantasy, a map that was played last week on Neoplanet S. It was such a cool game.
Well, there was actually other game that was a better example of it, which was on this particular map on the left top and the right bottom position.
Which one?
I forgot the players' names.
Oh.
But there was a case where the Terran player went for the Hellbats and the opponent had some siege tanks out, did defend against the Hellbats a little bit, but he started getting a lot more siege tanks out behind it, and he went for a timing push and won the game.
I think Reality actually was one of the Terran players in that game.
Might happen. And yes, what you said is perfect, because I think Flash watched the game and realized, oh, if I just make a lot of siege tanks early in the game, even if I lose a few SCVs, I can kill the Hellbats right away.
I think it was a combination of having bunkers at the mineral lines, turrets, and siege tanks. It was those three things combined together, just playing an ultra defensive style that allowed that particular strategy to really work. And I'm curious to see if both players are just going to go all-out aggression with the Hellbats, or if they're going to try to play more of a defensive style with the siege tanks, bunkers, and missile turrets. Focus on having a stronger army composition mid to late game and using that to win.
So Reality today, he opened up gas first, and he's going to play aggressive early in the game. It might even be cloak banshee, something that we don't see anymore, but we saw some players go for it. But most likely, Hellbats. Most likely.
There are a few Banshee builds out there in TvT. Banshees, for the most part, have fallen out of style in pretty much all the other matchups. Widow Mines and Hellbats just, I guess, more efficient at doing the job, especially with the boost to medevac speed with the Ignite Afterburners.
Well, look at this fast. Also getting a second gas behind this by Reality Fantasy. He did open up barracks first and then the refinery, so he's going to play this game a little bit more economically compared to his opponent.
I like that Fantasy is still scouting around the map despite his opponents going for the in-base factory. Maybe, you know, he's trying to get a closer starport or something along those lines. I don't see Fantasy going for a proxy now. I think he would have done it by this point, or had a different move.
Well, he has a command center going up, so he can't go for
exactly.
a proxy.
That's kind of my point.
Now we do have Widow Mines coming out from Reality. That's what he wants to do today, go for fast drops and kill a lot of SCVs. But he also needs to get a critical amount of SCVs, given the fact that Fantasy is getting a command center right now.
If he doesn't do a lot of economic damage, it's going to put him behind in the big picture here. So SCV is going to get picked off almost instantly. I don't think it didn't spot the Widow Mine. That's unfortunate, because if Fantasy sacrificed that SCV, he would know exactly what's coming his way and be able to defend against it without too much of an issue. The armory on the way from Reality, and everyone knows what that means.
Well, it was so crucial for Fantasy because he didn't scout the second gas inside the main base, which means that if he only saw one base, there's only going to be Widow Mines, and he's going to take expansion right after that. But if he saw the second gas, he needs to start assuming, well, my opponent could go for Widow Mines, and he's probably going to go for it, but there's going to be a follow-up behind it. So Fantasy is it was so crucial for him to get some scouting inside the main base, but he didn't get so, as the SCV was denied by the Marines.
Ooh, Fantasy, I like this. He's getting a few Widow Mines here, and he's going to almost completely hide that behind the command center, which is also really cool.
Well, he knows that there's a drop coming right now because it was refinery first.
This is just like in Brood War, where engineering bays would be used to block certain spider mines.
Yeah, but I really like this play by Reality. He knows his opponent scouted the early refinery, so there's no reason for Reality to just risk it and go inside the main base when Fantasy is inspecting the drops right now.
Fantasy, he does lose his supply depot, picks off a few Marines here. The Hellbat drop, though, on the way from Reality, so he's going to try to do a lot of damage as a follow-up here. The Viking has completed for Fantasy, though.
And here comes the SCV, gonna see nothing. Where did the Widowmine go at the natural?
I think it may have gotten picked off, maybe a scan. We didn't get, unfortunately, a shot of that. Reality going to go ahead and grab an expansion of his own now while continuing that Hellbat production. We do have an armory and under construction for Fantasy, so we already know what he plans on doing eventually.
But here comes the Hellbats from his opponent, Reality, though. Medevac does get picked up, but the Hellbat gets dropped in the SCV line, and he's attacking the Hellbats with the SCV.
Oh, well, he only lost 6.
Only 6 have been killed, but remember, this is going to be constant harassment from Reality, and if he does drop the Hellbats next to the SCVs once again, it could deal a lot of damage since those SCVs are so hurt right now.
Still a bit scary, though. I thought that more SCVs would be picked off there. You don't generally want to surround the Hellbats with your SCVs.
Well, here's a second drop, and there is a Widowmine, but the Vikings need to get a shot on the Medevac first before the Widowmine can actually finish the Medevac.
Yeah. Look at the bunker placement here as well from Reality. That's really meant to deter Hellbat drops.
Well, he does see the tech that Fantasy is going for, so he knows what to expect behind this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Fantasy still has some pretty solid defense here. He's getting a bunker of his own, of course, in his mineral line. And this Medevac over here, as long as the Vikings are in a decent position and the Widowmine hit is good, then he should be all right. But this is going to be a double-pronged Hellbat drop. While Fantasy does a Hellbat drop of his own, it's going to get wild really soon here.
Yeah, well, it's so crucial for Reality to do a lot of damage right now because his opponent had the natural command center a lot earlier. And if you look at the Marine count right now, 10-4 with Reality, Fantasy having a little bit lead, and he actually evades the Widowmine over there.
All right, the Medevac will eventually get picked off here. SCV's pulled off the mineral line. Vikings destroy the Medevac. The problem is there's going to be... Oh, no, it looks like Fantasy... He got it, man, with the Widowmine and bunker. Excellent defense here. Oh, the SCVs, though, got to be careful. At the same time, Fantasy going for a drop of his own. Looks like he hasn't picked off too many workers here, only 3. But 13 total up and killed from Reality. Fantasy, though, still has a supply advantage, though. Yeah, and Reality still needs to be careful. Nice job picking up the Medevac because it's so crucial to pick up the Medevac so that the Hellbats cannot get inside. And his opponent saving the Hellbats inside the Medevac is so annoying later in the game. Reality has a slight supply advantage here, but I feel like the defense from Fantasy is better. The offense is going to get really strong soon. Both players didn't realize where the Medevac and the Vikings are, so they're going to pull back. But that's 4 Hellbats inside the main base. No bunker over here. No defense. Reality does see it, however. Oh, that was really close. Maybe he missed that. Now the Medevac's moving in towards the main base, and there's nothing to defend. This Hellbat drop could end up doing a serious amount of damage here. But nice reaction timing by Reality as he pulls all of his SCVs away before critical amount of damage has been done. Fantasy dropping the Hellbats now at the natural, trying to kill off a few workers here. There's a little bit clumped up over there. Reality still needs to be careful, but the Hellbats do get picked off. So Fantasy has done a decent job at equalizing the amount of harassment done. Even saves one of these very weak Medevacs here. The +1 mech attack is going to complete sooner for Reality, but Fantasy is about 40% done or so, and they're both continuing down that mech unit composition pathway. They're just focusing on the Hellbats and getting a good amount of Vikings out for defense and to pick off any additional Medevacs that may contain any type of Hellbats. Now, if you look at the supply count, even if Fantasy decided to go for earlier command center than his opponent, I have to say it's been stabilized a little bit right now, with Reality getting a faster +1 than his opponent. Both players did not stack up a lot of siege tanks behind it either, so it's not like the player can go for a huge counterattack behind this. Yeah, it's still relatively even overall. Fantasy is going to complete his 3rd command center around the same time as his opponent, instantly adding 2 additional factories as well. Reality doing the same. So it's going to be a mech fight. Now, remember this. It's relatively even at this point. Nice pickup. 1 Medevac gets taken out. The second one will survive. But that was a really nice sense from Reality to know where those units were. And also has a lot of Hellbats at the natural to defend against drops. And he's good to go, man. He's like, I'm ready. I'm ready. Just I'm waiting for the drops. I'm going to come boost over there. It's like watching a SpongeBob episode just yelling, I'm ready. Now, I'm saying they're staying relatively even, and that's good news for Reality as he started a little bit behind in the economic wars. He has better upgrades than his opponent, and the SCV count, if you look at it right now, yes, a lot of SCV has been roasted here, but against 4 Hellbats, it's okay. Fantasy did manage to pick off a few extra SCVs there. He's ahead 10 SCVs over his opponent, 57 to 47.
Really nice.
The third bases for each player will be taken at the same time. Ooh, nice little pick off there from Fantasy. Gets a few extra kills there.
I don't think that was supposed to happen.
I love how this is the dynamic for TvT's changing, though. The Hellbats are like preemptively put into medevacs now, and they're instantly boosted to whoever they need to be for defense.
It's like watching Reavers once again in Starcraft Brood War.
Yeah, you got a slow unit, packs a powerful punch. You use another unit to help make that unit more mobile, and the more skilled the player is, the more effectively they can use those two units together.
Completely agree with you there.
So the Reaver is in StarCraft2, but Terran players have it not for us.
Well, you can't say it's as strong as a Reaver because...
darn close.
Well, because it's not randomized. The Scarab is randomized. It might hit the unit. It might not even hit the unit. Even if it hits the unit, it might not kill anything Hellbats. It always gets the hit on the SCV. I'd
say, though, that the roles between them can be similar at times.
Yes, the roles are very similar between the two units right now.
Yeah. All right, well... Fantasy, he is behind in supply. Reality is a little bit ahead of his opponent here. Sending out the Vikings here. There's a turret, though.
Now, look at this Fantasy. He's building 2 command centers behind this, which means that he's putting more minerals into getting the economy up for the late game. But Reality is squeezing out a lot of units right now. So Fantasy, he needs to defend this timing attack, and Reality, he needs to make sure he takes advantage of this.
Fantasy actually supply blocked temporarily here.
Yes. There was a supply depot over there.
Does he pick that off? It's still pretty even between the players overall. And Reality realizes, all right, I don't think I can actually break my opponent here. Hellbat's going into the third base there. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to get too many workers, though. Yeah, the workers just running away, and the Hellbats are kind of slow, but... oh, wow, actually, Fantasy got a lot of workers there.
That was a little mistake by Reality. He saw the Hellbats going over there. He was trying to micro his units, but he didn't see the SCVs being in the range of the Hellbats at the last second. And I'm also surprised that Reality actually pulled back his units after seeing the number of siege tanks that his opponent had, really low. Not that many Hellbats either. And I'm just surprised that Reality actually didn't harass the third base behind it.
Yeah, it seems like maybe Reality is afraid of Fantasy's defense. It's just too good for him to break. We do have Fantasy having a second armory, though, continuing with the Hellbat drops here, picking off more workers. And it seems like no matter what, the Hellbats are going to kill at least 1 or 2 workers. We have a Thor on the way as well for Fantasy. He's also going to have a slight upgrade advantage. Sieging up here now, he's in a great position. He's going to kill off a lot of these units here. Fantasy taking a supply advantage over his opponent ever so slightly, but the Vikings, they may end up landing here on top of the siege tanks. That's exactly what the Hellbats are doing with the medevacs.
This is not great news for Reality. He could have definitely secured an early lead, try to contain his opponent Fantasy inside 3 bases for a long time, especially with the lead in the Viking count right now. That's what the Terran player with Viking lead needs to do. Set up a siege line, make sure his opponent cannot push out on the map, set up a nice turret line, especially in mech versus mech wars, but Reality did not go for it, and this is a result right now. He lost all of his siege tanks. His opponent has a lot more siege tanks than him. Those Vikings later in the game, when they get maxed out, it's going to be useless, especially since Fantasy is not following up with air units.
Oh, the Vikings on the ground are going to eventually kill. All right, Command Center does survive. I feel like Fantasy is geared up a little bit better for the late game. He did get those additional command centers. He's got a slightly larger army than his opponent. The Viking count is definitely in the favor of Reality, though, and I think that's why we're starting to see a few Thors mixed into the army composition of Fantasy here.
I mean, here's the thing. He does have the lead in the Vikings, but what are they being used for right now?
Well, he's got total air dominance, yes.
He's got total air dominance, but that's not what he needs right now because his opponent Fantasy is just wrecking the ground army from Reality.
The ground army advantage definitely making a huge difference here. Fantasy moving forward with a lot of his units. He's trying to take over this third base, and the situation is dire when the Vikings land on the low ground.
Yeah, those Vikings are just there as emergency defense, as he could land someone on the siege tanks to take him out. But right now, if you look at the siege tank count, Fantasy has a lot more than his opponent Reality.
It certainly does. Also, supply advantage going to Fantasy. He's even building a few turrets over at this expansion. Fantasy taking a 4th and 5th base behind this. It looks like he is just starting to really outplay Reality at this point.
This wasn't supposed to happen. Reality had a nice lead against his opponent. He had the Viking advantage also, so he could have set up a nice line but that didn't happen, and this is a result of it.
There we go.
That's why
this
he has
is a
less.
desperation
this is a
move.
really huge desperation move by Reality. He needs to at least take out 2 command centers behind this. He's going to be able to get a lot of SCVs over here, especially with the siege tank support over here. But the problem is Fantasy, he still has a lot of siege tanks. So doing this, you know, run around and try to kill as many SCVs as possible is nice from Reality, but eventually it's not going to win in the game.
It's not, and one of the biggest reasons for that is Fantasy, he still has 2 additional mining bases that are just good to go. And a lot of the medevacs is going to get picked off here. I think almost all of them, due to these Vikings. Fantasy's still ahead in supply, 159 to the 138 of his opponents here.
Fantasy has more command centers, he has more siege tanks. He can set up a better line between the 2 players, and with a lot of Vikings getting picked off here and there, those Vikings that Reality has right now is just eating a supply. It's not doing anything.
Also, the engagements have certainly gone to Fantasy every single
look
time.
At this. This is so scary looking from Fantasy.
Look at how many tanks there are there. He's got up to 20 siege tanks versus the paltry 8 of Reality.
I don't see how Reality can actually win this engagement, especially if Fantasy sees where the siege tanks are going.
I mean, Reality, I think he's just going to try to keep trading. That's the only thing he can really do at this point. His economy is really suffering now, and eventually it's just going to be too much. Fantasy it looks like he wants to move back and defend against this attack now.
Now this is the last, pretty much the last army from Reality. Fantasy, he could, you know how far ahead he is compared to his opponent? He could split up his army and still take out what Reality has right now.
He's actually only sending a few Hellbats over to that 3rd base, but effectively disabling it for now. And whoa, actually, this could be what Reality needs here, is getting into a really solid position. And with
this is nice. He has the Vikings, which means he has the slight advantage over his opponent, but there is command centers over there. Can Fantasy overtake the siege tank line from Reality?
It's looking pretty grim here. Is he going to be able to do it?
Yes, he can, as the Hellbats are eating away on the siege tanks. 1, 2, the last 2 siege tanks gets taken out.
So there's only 5 tanks left, Reality. None of them even in the main base of Reality. I think with this, Fantasy is also going to take the air advantage as well, because all the Vikings landed for Reality and they've been taken out.
Now, Reality, he did a nice job killing a lot of siege tanks over there because he forced Fantasy to engage into that siege line. This is what he needed to do, and he did so, but I have to say it was a little bit too late.
Well, that command center very close to being destroyed here.
The Vikings are landing right now and going to attack the command center. Can he get it?
I don't think so. The repair is just a little bit too much here. Fantasy now under fire as well at this expansion, but Reality, this is his only mining base. He needs to keep it alive, and Fantasy is not going to let that happen.
Yeah, the problem is this harassment by Reality is fantastic, but the problem, he needs to do so while also saving his command centers.
And the fact is, he can't save his command centers. Out of resources in the main, almost dried at the natural. This command center will eventually fall here. I think Fantasy realizes it at the last second here. And the positioning is still really good from Reality. He's going to be able to hold this attack for now. The problem, though, is look at the supply difference from 165 to 77.
And those siege tanks over at the right bottom base and the nice harassment over there is going to get sandwiched in 2 locations at once. Siege tanks on the top, siege tanks from the bottom.
Reality's actually done a really good job at kind of keeping this game going on for a lot longer than I feel it should have. But eventually Fantasy will be able to overpower his opponent. He has the superior economy, he has the numbers behind him, and this attack over here will eventually be thwarted as well. The Hellbats and the siege tanks going over here doing what they need to do.
Goodbye, siege tanks. Goodbye.
So Reality, the thing is, he didn't actually have any army at home. All of his units were busy attacking and split up, and eventually they're going to get picked off. And then Fantasy can just be like, okay, well, I have an army, you don't. I'm just going to go kill you now.
Let's be honest, that's the best Reality can do right now, because he knows a head-to-head fight against Fantasy's main army is going to be devastating. So he's just trying to do these little cute maneuvers over here and there, trying to kill a lot of SCVs as possible. But even then, Fantasy has up to 78 SCVs right now, while Reality only has up to 46.
All right, Fantasy trying to go for the main attack here, the final attack, boosting forward. Hellbats being dropped on the siege tanks. GG! Fantasy defeats Reality in the 4th set. And that means that we're tied up at 2-2 now between SK Telecom and Samsung Khan.
I'm a little bit disappointed in Reality's play. He got a lot of Vikings out, nice for defense, but he didn't use them aggressively, as he could have gotten a better siege line near his opponent's base, but he decided to go back all of a sudden, and that actually put Fantasy a little bit in the lead as he bought enough time to finish 2 more command centers and get a lot more siege tanks out.
I feel like Reality maybe focused too much on defending against the Hellbat harassment.
Yes.
And in the end, that ended up hurting him a little bit. Now, score is 2-2 between SK Telecom and Samsung Khan. The next match is going to be Rain versus Solar. So don't